Hello and welcome to the 12th episode of Soul's 2023 webinar series featuring presentations on ecological land care. My name is Christine and I'm the Special Projects Lead with Soul. I'm happy to be your host today. I live in Ottawa on the unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. Before we begin, I'd like to mention that this webinar series and much of Soul's work is made possible by the generous and ongoing support of Gaia College, Canada's leading college for professional development and diploma courses in ecological land care. Soul is also supported by its members, so if you haven't joined Soul as a member yet, I invite you to do so. At the end of this presentation, we will have 15 minutes or so for discussion. So if you have any questions during or after, please put them in the chat. And just a reminder, we are recording this episode and it will be available on Soul's website and YouTube channel in the next few days. Finally, for today's presentation, I'm very pleased to introduce Lauren Widmer from Pollination Guelph. Lauren will present the Gosling Pollinator Gardens at Hospice Wellington in Guelph, Ontario. Welcome, Lauren, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Christine. It's a pleasure to be here and to have this opportunity to talk about some of the work that Pollination Guelph has been doing, and in particular at Hospice Wellington. This has been a long-term project for us, but I'm just going to dive right into my presentation. And okay, I'm not quite going. I'm just going to look for my technical person here. Okay, I think that's done it. So a little bit about Pollination Guelph. We're a federally incorporated nonprofit organization. We're founded in 2008 following a conference on pollinators that was hosted by the University of Guelph. We have a working board of 9 directors from diverse backgrounds, no paid staff, rely on the work of volunteers to help us achieve our goals. To do that, we collaborate with a broad range of organizations, including the City of Guelph, various NGOs, the private sector, and as well as the University of Guelph. We don't have a huge budget. Right now, it's in the range of about $10,000 to $15,000 a year. We raise funds through grants, some donations, sponsorships, an annual plant sale. We sell books and habitat signs. We have an annual symposium, which we hope to resume in 2024. And our vision is Guelph is a world model for the promotion and protection of pollinators and their habitat, helping to lead the way in environmental sustainability. So a photo of our board of directors. Just one person is missing from there. As I said, we come from a very diverse range of backgrounds, which has been very helpful in doing our programming and our projects. So a little bit about Hospice Wellington. It was founded in 1980 and it's been in this current location for, I think, about 12 years or more. The building was previously a Presbyterian church, but after extensive renovations, it was converted into a 10-bed palliative care facility with also room for meeting space and office space. It serves Wellington County and Waterloo region and offers a wide range of programs and services to all clients, be they residents, patients, family members, community members, what have you. So how did we get to the Gosling Pollinator Garden? The garden was proposed by one of the members of Pollination Guelph, and work began on the gardens in 2012. And over the years, it has been installed on a staged basis. And we're now maintaining about 9,000 square feet of garden, which is large. So we're attempting to balance pollinator habitat with the plantings, and pollinator habitat to provide resources such as nesting sites, pollen, nectar, plants for larval host plants for caterpillars that might be moths or butterflies, And these things also benefit other types of creatures as well. And so when I'm talking about pollinators, it's typically butterflies, native bees, which most people or many people may not know that honeybees are not native bees, but we focus on native bees like bumblebees. It could also include different kinds of flies, some wasps, hummingbirds, etc. So the funds specifically for the gardens were raised through donations and grants, and the largest came from the Gosling Foundation. The original standard landscaping has been replaced by a diverse range of species, and I will be happy to show you that shortly. And we use no pesticides on the site. So this is a few photos of what the site looked like before we started installing the gardens. You'll see that it was primarily turf. There were a few trees, there's some euonymus shrubs, and I think the reason for that, there was no garden planned originally, the site plan for the hospice. It came afterwards. There was enough space to install the gardens, but we essentially had to work around the existing structure. And landscaping was, I think, a secondary thought in the original plans. So one of the first tasks was to replace turf, and there was a lot of turf to remove. We had a private sector partner come in and help with sod removal, which helped immensely, and we proceeded to install perennials. As time progressed and we had more funds, we started installing shrubs, for example, on the southwest corner of the site. And in 2016, we were essentially able to double the size of the plantings and take it virtually right around the entire building. 2016, the fall, we unveiled signage in the presence of Susan and Philip Gosling. Philip Gosling, some folks may know, was one of the original founders of the Bruce Trail. He's also a well-known philanthropist and has supported quite a few different environmental programs and projects. So I'm just going to show a few photos of some of the plant species that we have had and currently have. The garden is dynamic, just like any garden. The types of plants and the species change from year to year. Some emerge, some disappear. It's just, to some degree, it's like natural succession. So our focus is on native species. The reason for that is most pollinators have evolved along with native species in Ontario, and we're specifically trying to support those species of insects. Having said that, we also use a number of different introduced species to fill gaps or to that might work in specific difficult situations. They also provide color, and I'll give some more examples of that. So just top left, you'll see there's penstemon, there's some sage. Next to that is hoary vervain and black-eyed Susan, monarda. The white ones at the right-hand side are Culver's root, and then in the bottom left is cardinal flower. So our goal, again, in trying to support pollinators, is to have a variety of blooms, different plants that are blooming throughout the growing season. So from spring to late fall. Other plants that we have here, more monarda. The top, there's Pearly everlasting and some lead plant. The far right, more cardinal flower. There's more black-eyed Susan. Bottom left, some echinacea, and hyssops. So we also try and have quite a range, a diverse set of species on site. So just some examples of less common species that rarely you would find in sort of more traditional gardens. Things like wild quinine and giant blue hyssop, eastern prickly pear cactus, and lead plant. Other species that typically appear in the spring include, top left, prairie smoke, and below that is pasqueflower, and then large flowered bellwort. The center is a geranium, columbine in the top right, and then Virginia bluebells. A few more early blooming plants, things like top left, the woodland phlox, some different sage in the middle there, top middle, barren strawberry on the top right, Solomon seal on the bottom left, golden Alexanders in front of, I believe it's a sage, and then a northern blue flag iris in the bottom right corner. So as season progresses, the two shrubs in the front are St. John's wort. The white flower is Agaura, which blooms throughout the season, which is beneficial. More of the hyssop. You'll see on the left, there's some cosmos, which is an annual, but which also provides nectar and pollen for insects for a large part of the year. Few more plants, another view there. On the right is obedient plant, Monarda on the bottom left, and just a view from what we would call a viewing gallery, where patients and visitors can sit out and just enjoy the view of the garden. A few more plants that are introduced, delphinium on the left, as well, and on the right is Shasta daisy and scabiosa. Liatris spicata, blazing star on the left, and on the right is Veronica speedwell. In the fall, right now we're enjoying some of the fall colors. There are a lot of asters and goldenrod right now. The bees are still very active on them. We have probably 6 or 7 different species of aster, if not more. Really provide lots of color this time of year. There is a butterfly on one of the sedum species that we have. The next one is relatively uncommon. It's blue mist flower. It's just starting to bloom. And similarly, on the far right is rough goldenrod. So mostly I've shown perennials, but we do have shrubs to augment the perennials and the grasses that we have. So in the top left there is hazelnut, witch hazel. Next to that is red osier dogwood, spice bush in the bottom left, and aronia or chokeberry on the bottom right. So we're really doing all this gardening to help our pollinator friends, and it is very gratifying to see them show up in the garden and active on the blooms. So the iconic monarch butterfly is in the top left there, feeding on a Joe Pye weed. To the right of that is a solitary bee, and I'm afraid I can't identify the species, but one of many that can be found in the gardens. Below that is a wasp. I know wasps don't always have the best reputation, but they are an important part of the ecosystem, and we have quite a number of different ones appearing in the garden over the season. In the bottom left, there's kind of a twofer one there, a bumblebee and a sweat bee on a rose. So we also use annuals primarily to provide color and variety throughout the season. Many of these have been bred just for their appearance, and so things like pollen and nectar may actually not be included in these blooms. So they could very well be of less interest to pollinators. Having said that, I alluded to the dual purpose of the gardens. One is to provide resources for pollinators, but also to provide a pleasant setting for people who use the hospice, either as employees or residents or visitors. The gardens are really a valuable community resource, and in addition to the pleasure of seeing the gardens blooming, it's been used as an educational tool for the general public and post-secondary students. More recently, we've started to harvest seeds from the plants and have been donating those to other people and organizations. The plant growth some years, like this year, has been amazing, and that's allowed us to divide plants that we use for our annual plant sale, which we hold in collaboration with other groups, or we may just donate the plants to other organizations which are doing similar things. Source of food for wildlife, obviously, beyond pollinators, such as birds. It's a site for pollinator surveys to see what kinds of species are there. Recently, we did a bio blitz where we had a team from the Canadian Conservation Corps come and survey, observe and record as many species as they could on the site. And you may recall the photos of the early days of the landscaping, where you could probably count less than 10 species on site entirely. Courtesy of the bio blitz, over 150 species were identified, and the observations have all been uploaded to inaturalist.ca. So our work has been recognized by other organizations such as Ontario Nature and NAPSI, which is the North American Pollinator Protection Campaign. And all this is done entirely with volunteers and fundraising through various means. Just some of our busy volunteers at work. So in summary, the partnership between Pollination Guelph and Hospice Wellington has been ongoing now for over 10 years. Through that partnership and the work of volunteers, we have been able to create 9,000 square foot gardens that are diverse and valuable to pollinators and other species, as well as creating an environment which is helpful and useful to the greater community. And we also want to acknowledge recognition by Seoul for awarding the gardens Greener Green Space Award for the second year in a row this year. And that's the presentation. So we're Pollination Guelph. If you are looking for more information about us, please visit our website, or you can go to one of our social media sites and find out what we're doing. Perhaps even take part in our symposium, which is going to be held in 2024, probably late March, early April. So thank you for your time, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Well, Lauren, that was a beautiful presentation. Spectacular flowers, well, perennial shrubs, just gorgeous. And it's an incredible, well, progression of a space, one that you said held
Absolutely.
room for 10 species to now be a space when 150 or so are identified in a particular moment. That's incredible. And I guess I have a question, but I really would invite people to put any questions they have into the chat, or react and put your hand up, and we can unmute you and you can ask a question that way. But I'll start off with a question, and it's one that I'm just interested in because you have a lot of plant knowledge, and I'm just wondering, what is your background and what brought you to be part of Pollination Guelph, and what has kept you going, or what it motivates you?
Right. Well, I have a master's degree in agricultural economics, which seems pretty far away from pollinators. But I think, to be honest, I think it's when I bought a house. And then I had an opportunity to do gardening, and my wife is very much involved in gardening as well. And just to see the interrelationship between pollinators and plants, and it was something that, I've always been fascinated by nature and wanting to be involved. And I think Pollination Guelph has just given me an opportunity to do some of the things that I just really enjoy doing, and being with people of like minds. And so yeah, it's all self-taught. I did have the opportunity to work on pollinator health strategy in my last couple of years before retirement at Ministry of Agriculture. But that was kind of the only career-related thing. And yeah, it's just been a passion and something that I've really enjoyed, and I think that's kind of enriched my life.
Well, that's a common thread, just the passion, or just when you're saying the motivation has a lot to do with supporting pollinators and knowing that they need that support. And just having such a site such as this that attracts so many, there's something that is so awe-inspiring, or
Mhm.
it's captivating, that it keeps people involved. But yeah, it must take a lot of volunteer effort. I know many groups
Absolutely.
who are enthusiastic about setting up and establishing pollinator gardens sometimes have a hard time, schools especially, probably with turnover of
Yeah,
support in the community
yeah.
to steward them. But it seems like this place is so beautifully kept. And as I understand, that's because there's volunteers both from Pollination Guelph and the hospice. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah. I mean, the hospice site itself is unique in that it draws all kinds of people who want to volunteer. And so that has benefited us. We also have like a shed, we have access to water, parking. It's all it is convenient to volunteer. But yeah, like any other organization, there is turnover. We have a small core, like many groups of folks who make this run. Other folks, time permitting, will come and help out for a while. So yeah, you're right. It does take a lot of maintenance, but we do have a very hardworking and talented crew to make sure that that happens. I
Well, I
was
also
just going
like,
to mention,
oh, go
sorry,
ahead.
it's just, yeah, the other thing that is really rewarding about working there is just how grateful people are uh, that that garden exists. You can imagine many families in particular are really stressed out at that particular point, with their loved ones in the hospice and, just in the process of dying. And so when they can just get a few moments of respite, even just to walk through the gardens and just look at things, I think it makes them very appreciative. It also evokes memories for some people who say, "Oh, I remember that plant in my mom's garden." So there's an emotional component as well, which I think is absent in many other projects or sites or garden pollinator gardens. So it's been very rewarding, really, for me, and I think the others working on this project.
Well, I want to get to that point about this being a hospice and that connection between the health care that's provided to the patients, families, and practitioners, the health staff, and those that you alluded to, the fact that people benefit from just being outside in that beautiful landscape and seeing those connections between the pollinators and the plants. But is there something that is also special about it, just in the way that it is organically managed? It's sort of a healthy way to steward the land. And is there that connection that's made between what's happening inside the building and what's happening outside in terms of the approach taken?
Uh, I don't think formally there is. That's probably an area that we could emphasize more. More recently, for example, we have had some conversations with the art therapist who works on site to encourage the use of the resources in the garden as part of the work that she does. So that could be, harvesting seeds or leaves that are scented, or maybe even I don't know, butterflies or other insects to be used internally for some of their programming. But in terms of sort of coordinating specifically with inside programming, we haven't done really a lot of that, I'd say, at this point.
Well, if anybody wants to read any other case studies, there's one on Soul's website about Sunnybrook Health Services in Toronto, because it's 100 acres, and the main idea of that landscape is to provide something that provides the healing and the health that is part and parcel of why people are on that site, whether they're being treated or whether they just want to benefit from the health benefits of a naturalized area. So it's on our website if anybody's interested in that. And I love how this is another example as a hospice of a time and place where a lot of people benefit so much from the landscape around them.
Yeah,
I'll
there's
turn
that.
to
Sorry, I was just going to mention there are other hospices, and I think you'll see a lot in the UK, for example, and some in the United States, which have done absolutely fabulous things in terms of gardens. They clearly have had the advantage of more funding than we have, but there's some really inspiring projects out there in terms of gardens at hospices.
Yeah, you're right. So I'm going to turn to a question that Kim has, and she's put it in the chat. And that is, if you were to give suggestions to businesses and organizations, what are the benefits of having a garden? What are some successes and struggles maintaining a 9,000 square foot garden?
So a couple of questions there. So in terms of benefits to like businesses, you're reducing your footprint. This is, a typical business, and we do have partnerships with like the city, an electrical utility, an engineering firm. By installing a functional, healthy, diverse pollinator garden, quite typically, some of these businesses have a huge campus and lots of turf and very little in terms of resources for pollinators. And at some point long ago, this land was beneficial to life forms other than human beings. So one thing that businesses can do, as I say, to mitigate their impact on the environment is to install a garden with native plants, some of which are threatened, for native species, pollinator species, many of which are threatened or in decline. So that would be one benefit. And the challenges of 9,000 square foot garden, well, one problem which appears to be resolved now was irrigation and water. We have gone through a number of years when there is an irrigation system installed, so that's a huge benefit, but it was malfunctioning all the time. And there were times when just to keep things going, we had to stand out there watering for long periods of time. There is a cistern on site, and the original idea was to use rainwater from the cistern for irrigation, which makes a lot of sense, but it was part of the problem, and it was constantly malfunctioning. So yeah, keeping things looking good, watered is a challenge. We've been fortunate with funding, but even that is something that we're going to have to deal with sooner rather than later. Although it's not a huge budget, it still takes money to buy plants, equipment, materials, and so on. Other challenges, we've been lucky, as I said, in terms of volunteers, but there has been turnover. And when, a key volunteer leaves, that leaves a big gap. Those are some of them. Yeah. I hope that addresses it. I don't know. Did I miss something?
Well, one question I have to follow up, and Kim, feel free to ask another one if you have one, but that is that this particular garden is a standout, if I understand correctly, in Guelph, and in terms of the gardens that Pollination Guelph is involved. And can you tell us how this garden has influenced and contributed to some of the other gardens in the town?
Yeah. So Pollination Guelph has probably about 6 different pollinator habitat projects going in the city. I would say this one is definitely the signature. It probably has the highest profile, the highest amount of biodiversity, and it's located on a very busy road. It's very visible. Having said that, one advantage that we have is the other projects that we do. We can transfer plants from the hospice site to the other sites, when we're dividing them, for example, or vice versa. So there's that benefit. Many of the same volunteers come to other sites, and so they're familiar with what we're doing and the planting. Similarly, equipment we can use at different sites. I do believe that our work has inspired other organizations. I know I'll give an example. In Mississauga, there's an organization called Blooming Boulevards. And in early days, I think they looked to Pollination Guelph as an example of what a community can do in order to establish gardens within the community that benefit pollinators. So, and I mean, this summer we had folks from Kitchener-Waterloo come, and we toured them to the different sites, providing them with ideas and information and materials on how to support what they're hoping to do, which is more roadsides. But I mean, there's still overlap there. So I think we have inspired people, and just having more than one site in the city helps us share resources.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And you're right. It takes sort of a whole ecosystem and a network to share this information, and not even to duplicate it. There's lots of resources that are out there, and it's really wonderful for people to have access to presentations such as this so that they can even have a starting point and don't need to invent it themselves.
Exactly. Yeah. A lot of people, say, oh, I wish I could do something. I just don't know how to get started. And, as I mentioned, we have all kinds of online resources and different programs and activities that people can tap into. And we're always happy to share our learnings and experience with them.
Yeah. Well, great. And Kim, thank you. Like, she's followed up to say that they're part of the Butterfly Way with the David Suzuki Foundation, which is also another
Okay. Yeah.
network to be involved in. And she does appreciate that connection with the hospice and health. And so anyway, well, let's continue to be part of that network and to connect with you, Kim, through Soul and Pollination Guelph, because it's true, we learn a lot from each other, and it continues that sort of circle of inspiration as well that we
Right.
all derive from doing this work.
Yeah, for sure.
I have a question again, and that relates to the idea when you were talking about sort of natural succession for the garden,
Right.
and that sort of allowing these natural processes to happen, and sort of stepping back a little bit when the design and the installation of the garden has gone in. And that just makes me wonder if there's interest and partnership at all with any of the more sort of the naturalists or ecologists, biologists, more so than just not just, but horticultural and gardening backgrounds. Is there a
Um,
connection?
yeah, I mean, on our board, we have folks who are trained entomologists, for example, someone who works at the Butterfly Conservatory. Um, so I think there are differences between us and, say, the Horticultural Society or Master Gardeners Program, where their focus is definitely more on more traditional gardening and maybe with some attention paid to pollinators, but that's less of a priority for them. So yeah, I think people who have been attracted to the work that Pollination Guelph does do have, well, I wouldn't say necessarily a scientific background, but more of a nature naturalist kind of orientation than strictly a gardening orientation. So,
And do you have influence with the city policies?
uh, I'd say yes. So the city of Guelph is a bee city. We assisted in their application to become a bee city, and the city received that status a few years ago. We work with city staff, particularly on our Clare Road project. At the last municipal election, we did a survey of all the candidates to see how they felt about pollinator habitat on city property or other property, and had quite a good response. So yeah, working with the city is, I think, is valuable and critical to do some of the things that we want to do. So so yeah.
Yeah, no, that's exciting. And I guess that's a very well helpful, even getting all of the city councilors to say their statement about
Yeah,
pollinator habitat. That's quite significant to get
yeah,
their attention and to get their feedback or
yeah,
input. So one other thing I'm really curious about is, can you tell us a little bit about the annual symposium and who
sure.
comes to that, or how does that work? How does it?
Yeah, so that has been a major part of Pollination Guelph for a number of years. Unfortunately, when COVID came along in March 2020 and everything shut down, or was it just shutting down like days before days before the last symposium. And then we've been on hiatus since then. So 2024 would be the first one. Typically, we've had a variety. It's a day-long event held in Guelph. Variety of speakers, people. There are booths. Sometimes we have little workshops. So planning is just starting with that. There is a registration fee. We look for sponsors for the event, and it's actually in the past been one of our major fundraising efforts. We usually have a theme related to pollination, pollinators, native plants, that sort of thing. That's all to be determined at this point. Uh, Usually we have more recently over 100, 110 people in attendance, and it is very well received. A great networking opportunity for people, similar interests, and just a chance to learn a lot more about pollinators and pollination.
Okay, well, yeah, that is hugely important also as an example of what can be done in other jurisdictions. It seems
Absolutely.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, Guelph is ahead, I'd say, of a lot of different places and
Mhm.
has sort of the partnership or the interest as well
Mhm.
and the public support. So,
Yeah.
yeah, no, that's exciting. And do the universities, well, did the university play a part in that as well?
Yeah, so that's evolved over the years. In the past, we have had folks like profs from the University of Guelph on the board. Not at the moment, but there are different opportunities for us to partner with the university. Some of their departments have donated money to us in the past. Um, so yeah, I mean, we do look for opportunities to partner with them whenever we can.
Yeah. Okay, and I have one last question, and that is, where do you see this garden in 5 years?
I see it continuing on. It will certainly evolve. I see that each week as we work there, how things change. We were on site today actually and making some significant changes, removing some spent plants and installing new ones. I think I think it will continue to be an inspiration to the people who are at the hospice, and I hope it's an inspiration to people in the broader community and outside of Guelph, something that could be done in their own communities. I see a lot of work ahead and some fundraising that has to be done in order to keep things going. So, yeah, I'm very positive about the longer term future for the garden. I think the necessary requirements are in place. Keeping volunteers coming, that will be a challenge. Some of us are getting a little older, and we always welcome new volunteers to come and help out. So yeah, very positive future for the garden.
I think so too. It's absolutely beautiful, and
Thank you.
it stands out as one that is just well taken care of and biodiverse, and just a successful example of one that's had an impact on the community. So we
Indeed.
really thank you for being here today,
You're
for your
very
beautiful
welcome.
presentation. And yes, we love having this garden as part of Sol's Greener Green Space program. And please check that out on our website. But this presentation will be one that will be on our YouTube channel and website in the next few days. And we have two more in this series for this year. One on October 10th, which is taking us to Toronto to a regeneration or a restoration project with the City of Toronto and volunteers. And then on the 24th, we're going all the way to British Columbia to look at a federal agricultural site that has created an Indigenous food plant demonstration garden. So it's one that is incorporating all of these plants that are very important to the local First Nations communities. And that being on a federal agricultural research site has influenced the other ones that are across the country in different provinces. So we look forward to that presentation on the 24th. So please check that out. And thank you very much, everyone, for coming today. And Lauren, thank you very much for the presentation.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.